And speaking of race, I was talking to I was actually buying a tow rope for my tube. I was talking to the girl at the cash register. She just asked me a couple of personal questions. People are nice in a small town. She's like, "Oh, where are you from?" Originally, I told her from Miami. She's like, "Well, why'd you move here?" And I told her, and I always give people an honest answer. This is, well, call it what you want. I know you'll label it to be racist or whatever else, but I said white flight. And she was like, "What's white flight?" She had no clue. She had no idea what it was all about. So, just briefly, I explained to her, Miami's become a multicultural melting pot. And that sounds good from the outside looking in, I guess. That they make it sound good to white folks at least, so that we'll surrender everything that we have. But when you really break it down, what they're doing is they're putting people from all different walks of life, from all different nationalities and races, in one area and expecting them to get along. Well, they don't expect them to get along. They know. They tell us that we all should get along. But in reality, that doesn't happen. So when you have children attending public school and stuff like that in an area there's only that much more reason for all of them to have conflict. Even a black child, an Hispanic child, an Asian child, or whatever it may be. I remember back in Miami, even the Jamaicans and the Haitians had problems with each other, and they were both black, right? So, when you start mixing that many people, there's just that much more potential for conflict. And that's what they want, remember? They want us all at each other's throats. So I don't know if any of you are still buying into this whole multiculturalism idea. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. Maybe on a small scale, but not on a large scale. Not when you just have a city full of all these mixed people. It's just not practical. It's just not going to work. They don't expect it to work. And anyone that's experienced it cannot come back and tell me, "Well, it's a beautiful thing and it works out great." It doesn't. Quite simply, it doesn't. Especially when it's being forced upon people. Now, I'm a proponent of nationalism of all groups. Any group has the right to be self-governed and to have their own land. But I will also say that if there's a group of people, and there certainly would be, that want to mix, and they are choosing to be in that environment, then and only then might it work to some degree. People are doing what they want. They're having things the way they want to have them. And if they no longer want it that way, then they'd have an option to go somewhere else. It's a pipe dream. It's not going to happen as long as the Jews are in charge, which again, before I even get into these other problems or solutions, my whole concern is exposing them, letting everyone know the truth, and then we can work towards solutions. So I rarely even get into these things. But I do want to point that out. Again, casual conversation, it just came up. The fact that most people aren't even aware of this in places that aren't mixed already, such as the place that I'm living in, which is probably 90% white or so, and they have no clue, no idea. They're just sold on this idea because they haven't had to experience it themselves. They haven't had to see the effects that it has. And as I explained to her, I said, that was fine for me, but for my children, it's not okay. I'm not going to allow, I won't even say force, but I'm not going to allow my children to have to suffer through some of the things that I had to deal with. It wasn't all negative. I've also pointed out that everyone that I know and love is a non-white, so I'm not saying everyone else is bad or whatever it may be, but I didn't know everyone, obviously, where I grew up. And there was a lot of racial conflict, and most of it was directed at the majority, myself, living amongst the minority. So try being a white guy, or a white woman, a white girl, in a population where you only represent 2, 3, 4, 5, or even 40% of it, where you're the minority essentially, amongst a group of angry so-called minorities that are taught to hate you, blame you, and openly attack you, both verbally and physically, that it's okay. And I don't know. I don't think that I have to explain how these double standards are wrong. Violence towards anyone is wrong, but it's also wrong against whites. Hate crimes go both ways.